Greetings, my 42 YouTube followers. Going to be a really short video today. Still waiting on some parts for the Barney Oliver. Now, I've gotten in a bunch of non-polarized capacitors from Panasonic that I've been testing. Interesting, I'll talk about in the next video. The 10 volt and the 6 volt 100 microfarad capacitors are exactly the same size in both diameter and length, and they look identical other than, you know, the printing on the label. And all of the 10 volts come in around 96, 97 microfarads, and all of the 6 volts come in around 107, 108, which is really interesting. It makes me wonder if it's just the same exact capacitor and they form 1 to 6 volts and form 1 to 10. You form it to 10, you get a slightly lower capacitance and lower ESR. You form it to 6, you get a higher capacitance and slightly higher ESR. These all tested 7/10 of an ohm ESR, and these all tested 9/10 of an ohm ESR. Very interesting. So we'll get into that, and we'll get into some stuff in the schematic, but I wanted to take a brief general troubleshooting tip here. Now, this is a cheap watchmaker's loop, and if you go to look for one of these, and I recommend you do if you don't have one, because they're only a couple of bucks for a cheap one like this that you can, you know, leave kicking around your desk. I mean, obviously, if you're a watchmaker, you're going to buy a nicer one. You know, this works really well for this type of thing. And what I'm basically talking about here is going over under magnification and inspecting every single connection. And you'd be surprised what you find when you do that. Even something that comes out of the Hewlett-Packard factory. I was going over this thing with the loop, and I'm going to try something pretty funny here. I'm going to try and put this loop over the camera. Wow, I can't believe that's actually working. And if you look down there, see that top wire that's passing through that eyelet there, that grounding eyelet, the one that's bent. I've already used up both of my hands. But you can see that the blob of solder that's there it's got the bottom wire. That one's soldered to the lug, but the top one is just floating there. And if I poke it with my finger, oh, let's see if I can do this. Oh, this is such a, yeah. Well, I don't know if that's going to work. But you just have to take my word for it that if you poke on that wire, it's loose. It's not a good connection. And so that is a bad ground that has been there since this amplifier was built. Now, it probably was making good physical contact most of the time, but there's room for it to wiggle. And then, you know, with a little bit of age, a lot of these weird faults in old amplifiers, you get a bad connection like this where it's just physical contact that the wire is making, and everything's working fine because it's making physical contact, but over 20 or 30 years you get some oxidation form between the two things that are just barely making physical contact, and problems start happening. So anyway, more on the Barney Oliver as the parts come in. Going to be a couple interesting things going on. I got some new output transistors for this amp, and I've been testing the ones that I pulled out of there. I have gotten the amp pretty much ready to go and ready to accept the new output transistors, and I'm confident that it will work once I put them in. One of the things I'm going to experiment with is the YouTube channel Tech Ingredients. I don't know if you're familiar with that channel, but if you're not, you should be. You should be, because it is one of the most rigorously scientific and interesting channels on YouTube. Anyway, they've come out with a thermal compound that they say outperforms every other thermal compound, and we're going to take a look at that and try to use it here in this amplifier. Now, I don't think that I'm going to be able to take any sort of critical measurements with before and after unless I want to go to the trouble of pulling out 4 transistors and remounting them with different thermal compound and cleaning up the mess that makes each time. I don't know if I have the patience to do that, but we can at least cover its suitability, its ease of use, and we can cover whether it works at all and whether it's suitable for mounting TO3 style transistor packages as opposed to just your standard CPU type of mating surface. And most CPUs don't have 50 volts on them, so it's going to be interesting to see. Well, these transistors only have 40 volts on the outputs, but it's going to be interesting, to check the breakdown voltage of that stuff. And they say it's non-conductive, so that's highly encouraging. So, in any event, more coming soon on this amplifier as soon as I have all of the parts I need in hand to finish it up and start taking measurements. And then we'll start taking a look at this wood. And actually, as it turns out, the owner's manual is giving us permission to finish this wood. Not kidding. More on that later. All right. Talk to you later.